we aim to be the best place you ever work. And that's 100% where we are. And so if that's the aim and that's the business I get to turn up to every day, it's a massive privilege. The right people in the right roles and getting them in and keeping them. That's the biggest challenge. People can be themselves, people feel looked after, people feel trusted.
Amazing.
And it's growing. Like, it's really exciting to be on something that's growing so far. They really struggled. So Sam and I made a bunch of the first batches that went into Waitrose by hand in their factory. The first order was more than the entire revenue of the business for the last 3 years.
Rob, how are you, mate?
I'm really well. How are you?
I'm very well, mate. Thanks so much for coming down. Excited for today. We've got a lot to talk about.
We do.
I'm looking forward to it. But before we talk about you disrupting and growing a brand new industry, we're going to build up the hype for that.
Exactly.
What were you doing before you started Moth?
It's a really good question. So before Moth, we had a sort of 2.5 years of a glass bottle brand called Beverage, and that was our sort of really early day startup. From Sam and I were both 25. Obviously, I have a co-founder, Sam, and so we both started that about 25. That was make it in your kitchen for the test recipes, then moved to a tiny manufacturer and had no team, no funding, like really, really bootstrapped. So I did that for 2.5 years, which was really exciting. Got listings like Selfridges, and we were actually talking about the first delivery we ever did today, where we went to the depot in Knightsbridge and had to deliver like basically shoe boxes, because we didn't get our own boxes, of these glass bottles, and put them but they wouldn't let us in because we didn't have high vis. So there's all these like lorries turning up, like HGVs, and we're just there in Sam's old car, like with the back of his old car like clinking with glass bottles. And so we turned up there, had to run to Sports Direct on Oxford Street, buy some high vises, come back and do the first delivery. So it was like a lot of that very startup-y stuff for 2.5 years before Moth. And
nice.
COVID turned up, we rebranded, and the journey of Moth started.
Well, we're going to get into the journey of Moth because it is nothing but fascinating and happening a lot. But even before starting your first brand, I know you went to university, but what were you like in the very early years of your life? Tell me about that.
Yeah, let me get a couch and tell you about So yeah, the early years, Sam and I went to school next door to each other. So I think probably a lot of those early years are based on the friendship we had. Yep. We went to university together by accident. He did film, I did music. So the first time we actually ever worked together, I used to write the music for Sam's films. He then subsequently went and built a career in film, whereas I didn't. I went into sort of hospitality for a bit, which I just fell in love with. Looking after people with food and drink, that was the itch that I needed scratching. It was just the best thing. And so we both came back to London and were doing jobs. He was building an amazing visual effects career, doing stuff like The Lion King and having an amazing career. And I wasn't doing that. I went to work for an entrepreneur because I knew nothing about business. I had a music degree, but I wanted to learn. I was really interested in doing something for myself.
So you had a music degree, but wanted to go into business?
Yeah, I think I wasn't interested in wearing a scarf in June. I didn't at one point I thought I was going to be an opera singer. Then I thought film composer. And then I sort of thought, you know what? I did the hospitality piece, and food and drink and people I loved. So I went and got some experience from another entrepreneur and worked for him. But it got to the point where Sam was in a job that he didn't love, and I was in a job where I was sort of at home by myself all day and looking for something else. And I'd learned loads, but it got to the point where that business needed more funding and it wasn't getting it. And so I sort of sent Sam a Facebook message saying, do you want to start a company that makes the perfect bottled old fashioned? And his reply verbatim on Facebook Messenger, which dates me as a human, I know, was, that's not actually a terrible idea. And that's how the whole thing started.
And that was it?
That was it. We'd always actually said we wanted to start something together. And we, for ages, were like, we were young and naive, still are, but like we're saying like, oh, let's do something in tech because the product would be really hard. We'd have to have like a warehouse and stuff, and that'd be complicated. The answer is yes, it would be complicated. But we eventually were like, let's just build a business where we want to turn up to work. And then eventually we settled on cocktails as that's the best way to do it. But it started as, we want to be at a place where work is a positive influence on our lives. And then we eventually got to cocktails, and eventually to Beverage, and then to Moth.
What made you message Sam?
So we've been eating and drinking together for a long time. I knew right from the start, and I have a lot of respect for solo founders, but I knew I wasn't one. Best in a room with people, don't love doing things by myself, like what needed. And also like I have a half a skill set, and the bit that I don't have, Sam has in spades. So we like to say together we make one sort of functioning human.
Nice.
And on a good day it works. And so I knew I was no one else I would rather have done it with. And so it was the obvious thing to do. I was never going to do it by myself.
Did he need any convincing, or was he pretty sold?
I mean, the reply was pretty quick, and it was, that's not actually a terrible idea.
Like left on tick for a long period.
No, yeah. We have, because of the age we live in, we have all the original conversations of like all of our thoughts. And I think eventually we were like, we want to be the innocent of bottled cocktails. And you can go back and be like, all these messages. And at one point there was a message that I said, take me, for instance, I'd never drink a canned cocktail. And we went through this whole thing of bottles only to realise that I was massively wrong. And actually, turns out I would. It just had to be Moth.
Yeah.
So yeah, quite the journey.
We're looking back on like that kind of like those early days, because I remember early days of like starting my business and stuff. And like I was saying to someone the other day that I feel the early days are sometimes the best of just like being so naive, like enjoying being so naive. Do you know what I mean? Like when you look on that where you can't even think about the problems you're going to have in the future because you just don't know they're going to exist, right? And having that kind of like complete kind of excitement of just it's going to be absolutely fine. You're going to build something great and it's just going to work. Do you know? Did you have that?
Yeah, I think it's like that in retrospect, but at the time, like you don't know what you don't know, which can be a superpower, but also can trip you up. And I think, yeah, there's a lot of luck involved to get through those first early years, and we certainly had our fair share. But I think, yeah, it's super exciting. But it's doing the sort of 2-person with no office and sitting in a cafe in Soho to work versus now building a team. Like both of them are really hard for really different reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you couldn't do now, like the running around and doing the delivery to yourself to Selfridges, for example.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think I could do that now.
So the first version of, I guess, Moth, which wasn't Moth, but
yeah,
the first version of it, why didn't that actually work?
So I think it was really interesting. It worked up to a point. So we got to a point where we were like the Ritz, Harrods, Selfridges.
This is pre like 2017, 2018.
This is 2018, right? Sort of 2020.
Fine.
This is Bouver. So it's the same company which changed the name and rebranded.
Yeah.
So it's sort of been one continuous thing, but it didn't work. So it worked up to a point. It was these, like, we were very expensive. We were like £8 for a little 92ml serve. You had to pour it out of a glass bottle, stir it or shake it and do stuff to it. So there are a lot of steps between the products and you having it. Don't get me wrong, they taste amazing, but we sort of moved away from that. Like the learning was take the quality and then make it easy to enjoy. So like if you put steps between the consumer and the product that make it harder to enjoy, people will just choose a can of beer or a glass of wine, because you come home tired on a Friday night. You do not, most people, and even me, like I come from a bartending background. I didn't reach for 6 bottles of spirits and make stuff.
Yeah.
That was not the behavior. The behavior was, I would love to have a Negroni, but I don't want to think about it. And if you add steps, you have to do thinking. So that was, but we needed to do all of that to get to the point where we are now. But yeah, the format was wrong and the price point was wrong, and we were quite snobby. Like we were like, you got to wear the right shoes to enjoy this. Whereas now it's, we'll do tracksuit or tuxedo. Like we'll keep up with you wherever you want to go. That's where we are now.
Do you feel that, and we're going to get onto the success of Moth and what it really is for those that don't know, but do you think if you didn't have that 2 years of version 1, you would have even slightly amount of success you had today?
Wouldn't be here. Like those 2.5 years was learning. That was our MBA, right? Like that was making every mistake you can possibly make. Like now we still make plenty of mistakes, of course we do, but like we made all of the mistakes. And so like learning that, meeting the people, also like so many lessons of like learning what's actually important. Like we learned from 2.5 years, the most important thing was the liquid in the container, not the container.
Right.
And like if you don't do that, like you can't learn. And so it's the most important 2.5 years of the business. But then Sam and I have a thing, we always say, well, this year is really important for Moth. And then we get to this time next year, like, this is the year it's really important for Moth. So I think it's kind of, it's all important, and we've got to do it to get here.
What was there like a really big lesson that stands out over those 2 years before you turned into Moth? Was there something, obviously you mentioned the product and those variables, was there something else that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I think it's that, don't put steps between the product and your consumer enjoying it. Like, don't make it hard to enjoy. Like, we always wanted to be like the perfect fit for your life, and actually we weren't, and we had to realize that.
That makes sense. So getting into Moth, what is Moth, first of all? Let's start there.
So Moth is a canned cocktail like no other. They're sort of bar quality, bar strength. We say they're the most delicious cocktails in a can. I think we are like a new approach to RTD, because canned cocktails have been out there for a long time. They're a bit
RTD being ready to drink.
Exactly. So it's a bit of an institution, like the tinny on the train is an institution, but we wanted to make that much more similar to what you get in a cocktail bar. So why can't it be just as good as what you have out and about with amazing bartenders, but easy to have?
And where did you start? And obviously I know you had 2 years of kind of product development in those pieces.
It's a generous term. Thank you.
Yeah. What was the first product you launched with?
So we launched with 4 straight into Waitrose. It's a bit of a bizarre story of how it came about. So we've been
straight in
during COVID. So
that's kind of unheard of, right?
It's totally unheard of, and I think we've spoken about before, like the luck and the turning points in things, and that was definitely one of them. Like we've been emailing Waitrose for 2.5 years about the glass bottles. They were lovely, but we never had a reply because they were the wrong fit.
Yeah.
But suddenly we had this call with Waitrose, and we were saying, we're going to do these big sharing bottles, and we're thinking about these like little cans for airlines. And they went, we wouldn't touch the big bottles, but those little cans, they're really interesting. And
so this is in the Moth stage, right?
So we were rebranding,
right?
And we were like, we think the way to do RTD cocktails is a big sharing bottle at 25 quid and then little cans for airlines.
Yeah.
And Waitrose went, no, because you're still putting steps between you and the consumer. It's still not right. But those little tins you're thinking about for airlines, that would be really interesting. And so we really listened. We took that advice and we said,
wow,
great, we're just going to do tins. Here's what it looked like. We'll give it to you exclusively.
Do you remember getting off that call being like, oh...
I don't know if there's ever one of those light bulb moments, because this whole thing, that all of this call was pitching for 25 stores as a little trial during COVID. And then,
for those who don't know, that's like that. It sounds like a lot of stores, but that's not loads, right?
No, I mean the Waitrose estate's about 300 stores, and so, but we were like 25 in Waitrose. This is the dream. When we started in 2018, getting Waitrose was the end of the journey. We're like, and we're Waitrose, then we're done. And it was the first step in Moth, so we definitely moved those goalposts very quickly. But we said, give us 25 stores, let's try it together, because it's new, it's a new format, new price point, super innovative. And then we got off the call, we got an email saying, it's not 25, it's 200, and you've got 2 months. And so that's the sort of like holy moly moment where you're like, what are you getting?
I remember, I think I read an article that you and Sam, I think both were in, which is many, I think it was just general brands prepare for failure, but not many prepare for success.
Yeah.
Is that one of those moments?
I think that it absolutely is. It's something my dad said really early on. It's not like failure kills you very slowly because it's sort of iterative and things go downhill. Success can kill you overnight because if you can't fulfill that, you don't get another go. So like we'd always said when we did our first investment round, we're going to raise, and within 18 months we'll get a supermarket. And we got a supermarket before the end of the round. And so that sort of conversation with investors and that conversation, we had to sort of really rapidly adapt and make sure we could fulfill it, because as we said, like we have one chance to get it right. And so for that first year, the business plan was really simple, which was no customers other than Waitrose. Get one customer, just deliver one chance, just do that.
So you had spoken to Waitrose, one Waitrose. Yep. One Waitrose is a hard thing to say. You had Waitrose, and then you were raising money at the same time. Did you then have to change how much you were raising or anything like that to fulfill Waitrose? Because people that don't know, 200 stores, how many cans would that be in first kind of couple of months?
I mean, it's never enough, obviously. Yeah. But no, I remember it being more than the first order was more than the entire revenue of the business for the last 3 years.
Wow.
And so like that sort of step change was hold on to the seat of your hands.
So what did you do in the raise period? Like how did you adjust there?
So we'd always planned to get one. It was just a long time away. So I think in the end, we start with our guns. We had a good plan, and then we went on, and basically Waitrose went a lot better than we thought, so we raised like a little top up. But it was a lovely story to go back to investors of, hi, the thing that we said would take us 18 months took us 2, and actually great news has gone way better than we thought, so can we top up a little bit? And that was a much easier conversation. But yeah, no, it definitely surprised all of it. Continues to surprise us.
Yeah, for sure. Because effectively you've kind of created a category, right? I know that there's been, and you'll definitely probably correct me if I'm wrong on this, but there's been a few kind of ready to drink products over the years, but you guys have really been the pioneers in kind of creating the space. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so ready to drink is a category that's existed for a long time. They're usually a 250ml can. You remember like a Gordon's in a tin, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's 250ml, it's 5%, and it's like quite different to what you get in a bar. The bit that we did is like that, they're all at £2 and below, and we went the other way. The usual question in RTD is how cheap can you make it? And we went, well, how good can you make it? And therefore, what does it cost? And so we knew that like the price point, we were never going to get to £2, but that's the wrong aim. The aim is how good can you make it? And so we said, this is the best RTD we can possibly make. It's a bar standard, it's delicious, and it's going to cost twice as much. So it's a new format, it's smaller, it's stronger, it's higher quality, and it's cost twice as much as everybody else. The innovation in that is the sort of like, it's one of those categories that's just underloved. Like it's an afterthought for so many people. Like lots of brands do an RTD, but they'd rather sell you a bottle of spirit. It's like a nice to have.
Why is that?
It's like, it's not the highest margin category for a lot of people, because if you make it for £2, there's not lots of money to be made.
Yeah.
And so for us, we said, if we're specialists, that's our superpower. We wouldn't rather sell you a bottle of the wonderful vodka or tequila we use. We'd rather just sell you, all we do is great cocktails that can.
Yeah.
So like there aren't many brands in the category that just do RTD, and being specialists like that has allowed us to innovate and really lead.
And a lot of that kind of early stage growth for you guys happened in COVID, right? Over that kind of period.
Yeah.
How did that affect the business?
I mean, it's the sort of game of two halves, really. Like the first half is we lost every account we had. Really? Like all the department stores, all the stuff in the glass bottles all went, but we managed to get the glass bottles onto Amazon, and that kept us going. Like our espresso martini accidentally became like one of the number one selling products on Amazon for booze, because it was just such a insane set of circumstances that hopefully none of us ever see again. Yeah. The second half is obviously that opportunity, that growth in RTD that allowed that conversation with Waitrose and for everything to change for us. And so we were sort of day one of COVID, terrified with everybody else, the whole business, are we going to give up? And then sort of coming out the other end of COVID, we had a new format, new branding, new listings, starting to grow a team. Like, it was a roller coaster. Yeah.
In the kind of business's journey to that point, early days of COVID, as you just said, when it was all kind of battle stations and pretty grim, was that the hardest moment you'd had to date?
Yeah, I think probably that was definitely one of them. I think that, and like the Waitrose piece is obviously a success, but like it was really hard to like keep up with that and scale.
How big was the team at that point?
Sam and I, that was it. We just Waitrose 200 stores by ourselves, and like the first 30,000 cans that went into Waitrose, like we didn't have like a line labeling, so we hand labeled with a little foot pedal the first 30,000. Like
the two of you,
with like a really tiny factory up in the north. Like it was just like super scrappy. Like, we were technically key workers during COVID because we were in food and drink, so we had to travel up there with our special letters to the factory. Like, we did a Waitrose tasting on.
But you were in the factory making the product?
We went, yeah, because like we're obsessed with quality, and like it was the first time with a new manufacturer. Like, we had to be there. Like, everything we do is obsessive, like is quality obsessed. So in the end, actually, they really struggled. So Sam and I made a bunch of the first batches that went into Waitrose by hand in their factory. Like,
that is crazy.
If you take like, this Waitrose thing has to happen, this is our one chance.
Yeah.
And like, there's a million reasons not to, but if you just like, there's no option. It has to happen. There's one chance. Yeah. So we went to the factory. We made it in their factory.
Were you quite focused on just delivering that, not thinking about anything else, like after that? You know what I mean? It was just like, deliver this, and then everything else will kind of work itself out.
Yeah, I mean, we were definitely still going through the phase where Waitrose is the end versus Waitrose is the start. But I think like, I would like to say, yes, I had a great 5-year plan ahead of me, but in the time you're in the trenches, you just got to get through it and make it happen, because we knew what would happen if we got it right.
For sure. Was there anything that you've learned, particularly with working with, you know, people like Waitrose? I think I've spoken to so many people now around working with Waitrose and Sainsbury's, and you guys are stocked in quite a few places now. Is there one bit of kind of advice that you have in those relationships? Because it feels like the relationships are the most important thing, the human-to-human connection, as opposed to obviously things like sell-through rate and stuff are key parts. But is there something in that relationship that's really key? Yeah,
we have a philosophy that like dealing with Moth should always be a win-win. Like, when we deal with a grocer, we're not screwing them on margins, and hopefully they're not screwing us. Like, it should be that if you sell more Moth, like, you win. So like, we did a piece of category work recently. Like, there's nothing more valuable you can put on a shelf in ready to drink than Moth. Like, we will make you the most money, and so selling more of Moth is great for your numbers. And so like, things like that, where it is a benefit to deal with us, we have a philosophy of like a really short customer list, but they get looked after really, really well. Like, it's a Rolls Royce service with us. Like, we will lean into your operations. We will make you look incredibly clever. We will take anything off your plate that we can help you with. Like, and we can only do that because we have a short list of people. Yeah. And so like, just being helpful, making sure they win, and then trying to deliver something for them. Like, there's an emotional decision, and like, there's definitely a legacy piece for buyers of like, you want to be the person that discovered, like, Seedlip's a great example. Like, you want to be the person that launched Seedlip, and hopefully you want to be the people, like for Waitrose, that they look incredibly clever for now discovering this new category, right? And so they took the risk on us.
Who discovered Seedlip? I think, wasn't it Waitrose as well? No.
So it's really interesting. It's a bit of a sad but really interesting story. There's a buyer in Selfridges who was called Terry, and Ben Branson, I believe the story is true, like took a 2-litre like empty lemonade bottle of this liquid to Terry and was like, I've invented this thing, it's called Seedlip. And Terry like saw it, got it immediately, and launched it in Selfridges. And from there, like, loads of Michelin star restaurants and great success, like, an amazing brand. We went to Terry and we were like, you know, you used to talk about Seedlip at dinner parties. We think Beverage, what became Moth, is what you should talk about now. Yeah. So like, he took that chance on us. He was unbelievable, like really took the risk, put us in Selfridges, and that Selfridges listing is where all of this grew from, because you have like a name that people have heard of and it's good enough for Selfridges. And so the sad bit of the story is that just as we were finishing Moth, he called me and said, I'm leaving Selfridges. And I was in the offices in Notting Hill of Pentagram, who we did our rebrand with, and I was like, that's amazing. We've just finished our rebrand. I'd love to show you. Let's go for lunch in November. Like, I'd love to show you all the work. And I got a chance to be like, just thank you so much. Like, we wouldn't be here without you. We've got this Waitrose listing. Like, and just like, I gave like 5 minutes on just how amazing he'd been and how fantastic. Yeah. And he died 2 weeks later. Like, I never got to go for lunch with him in November. And it's like,
I'm sorry.
These are like some of the people that like the luck and the turning points that are made by human connections and those relationships that changed the course of history. John Vine at Waitrose being the one who took the risk on us in Waitrose. Like, these people alter the course of brands. And so Terry did it for Seedlip and did it for us.
That's an amazing story, but it's super sad as well.
Yeah, but I'm just so glad. It's rare that you get a chance to say thank you properly, and I'm really glad I did.
Yeah, for sure. God. So going into Waitrose, a few SKUs, well, one SKU to start with. Four to start with. You've now got 8 with some coming in the future, which we'll get onto.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you about the new product development piece.
Yeah.
Where do you decide? Obviously, you're working in cocktails. They're all very different. There's also a lot of different drinkers, I imagine, with them. You're kind of connecting with different audiences, if that makes sense. What's your kind of new product development process? How do you guys as a brand identify which product to make?
So it's changed a lot from here are some cocktails that Sam and I love.
Was that the early
Like
days?
really early days of like, we used to do a White Russian and we knew we didn't want to scale that because it was really challenging. So last minute, we decided to swap that for a margarita and like a sort of 5-minute chat. Like, should we do a marg? It's now our best-selling product. We're the best-selling margarita in the UK. 73% of margaritas bought and drunk in the UK are Moth. Like, that was a 5-minute decision.
Oh, really?
On a whim. But now we're getting way better. Like, it's looking at trends, looking at data, and looking at the fact we have a philosophy of like a short menu done really well. And so I don't want to do 100 cocktails badly. I want to do a short list that you can trust and that you can go to because they're consistent and perfect. And so, yeah, we haven't got like a backlog of 20. Each drink takes us a really long time to do.
How long does it take you to do?
I mean, between 9 and 18 months. We had the mojito, like most mojitos really struggle with like the mint profile. It tastes a bit like toothpaste.
Yeah.
And we said we're not happy with that. And so like getting fresh mint right to launch our mojito took like nearly 2 years, like to get mint right.
Wow.
And so like it can take a really long time, and sometimes we can turn it around quite quickly. But,
Yeah. So what does the new product development process kind of look like now?
So it goes, make it. So we have a bar in the office. We make a bar standard, like we iterate and try and get the perfect cocktail bar example.
Yeah.
Thing about a cocktail is it exists for 10 minutes in a bar, if you're thirsty, a lot less. And so then we have to go and commercialize it and make sure that it tastes perfect in 18 months. But we start with an amazing spirit partner, a perfect recipe, and then we try and take that and make sure that it's going to be perfect in 18 months. And you can make it in a single serve cocktail shaker, and then we can go make 100,000 of them and it's still perfect. That's the scale of scaling it.
I mean, that's complex to say the least, which I guess must be a challenge. But how do you look at, I know one thing I wanted to ask you personally from my cocktail experience, I enjoy Negronis. Probably the only drink I actually drink apart from beer.
I heard you talk about this on Quarter and I was like, great.
It's Negroni. Vodka Negroni though, which really throws people off because gin makes me really sad. It's really weird. It just makes me feel a bit sad and emotional. So just vodka Negronis, drink them more, less fruity. Just,
Sure.
How I'm living my life these days. With the product in like shaking it, obviously you're talking about bar standard. There's certainly details like ice and garnish and all those other things. How do you put that into the new product?
Yeah.
Or is it when you're pouring out? Do you see what I'm saying?
No, so basically we designed the product so that if you drink it out the can, warm in the tube at 4 a.m, it should still be an amazing cocktail experience. Like, that's the test.
I'll test it.
Yeah, please do. I would encourage anyone to drink on TFL. But then the better is cold out the can or in a glass, and best is obviously served nicely, garnish, cocktail glass. You wear a bow tie, preferably. So that's a good, better, best. But then we always make sure that because you might drink it out the can, there's a bit of the garnish in every drink. So there's sea salt in the espresso martini, there's chocolate bitters in the sea salt in the margarita, there's chocolate bitters in the espresso martini, there's a bit of grapefruit in the Negroni. So we try and make sure that even if you don't pour it out and you don't wear your bow tie, that you still get that full experience. And then obviously in terms of dilution, like they're the strength they are because that's the strength in a bar when it touches your lips, like after it's been shaken. So that's the philosophy of just get as close to you as you possibly can to that perfect bar experience. That's what we're all harking back to.
And do you feel like that is where, when it comes to the new product development, if you started to move away from that, it's kind of a failure as a brand? Like if you lost your identity and not focusing on quality and I guess performance of the drink, if that makes sense, that would just be so far away from what the mission of Moth is in a way. Yeah,
and I don't think you need too grand a mission statement. Like, it's hard enough to make a great cocktail consistently. That's really hard, and if you can get that right, you can build what we're doing. So I think if your focus is never to disappoint when someone opens a can, to be obsessive around quality, if you can hold those as the madness goes on around you, then you'll be in a good spot
for sure. So obviously with Moth, your range is pretty much full alcohol, full strength, powerful stuff. Do you want to go into no alcohol, low alcohol? Is there any interest for you guys to dive into that?
I think it's a really interesting space. There are some amazing people doing really good jobs of it already.
Yeah.
We have one of our values, which is just do one thing well. And the moment we are here for bar strength, bar quality.
Yeah. And
just doing one thing is hard enough at the moment. So our focus is getting that right, but absolutely in the future. We try to be a really inclusive brand.
Yeah.
And so that I think that's definitely in the distance we could look at it, but right now we're about to bring out 2 new full strength alcohol ones, so it's not running before we can walk.
For sure. So we've spoken a little bit about, I guess, like the ready to drink space and the fact that you guys have kind of helped to expand it so much, but since you have, a lot of people have also dived inward, right? I'd be right in saying that. How are you viewing the competition in the space right now? And like, how do you see what other people are trying to do in replicating what you guys have done? And is anyone getting close to what you think you guys have achieved?
Yeah, I mean, we had this kind of amazing 2-year period where it was like only us that thought it was a good idea.
Yeah.
And it's really gratifying now that other people have gone, oh no, actually, this is a really good idea.
Yeah.
And I think quality in the space as a whole is raising massively. Like the consumer expectation of what a good cocktail tastes like after COVID is amazing. Like people's expectations after making cocktails for themselves at home for 2 years are sky high. And that's amazing. So I think for us, it's really gratifying to see that the category's growing. People are really investing in it. Like now going to meetings with grocers and stuff, we've got 2 new grocers launching in April and May. They knew what the category was. They knew what it is. And we have to go and explain why we're the right choice and why we'd be a great partnership. Whereas previously you had to go and explain like why anyone would take a risk on this brand new category. So it's really, really interesting, and I think it's getting way better. But I think we're in still this lovely position where we try to make sure that because we're obsessive about quality and because we've had this sort of 2-year grace period, it's all going to grow, and it's kind of our job to lead and sort of really like advocate for the category. Like more space should be given to like fantastic cocktails than, you know, beer or wine or spirits.
Yeah. Do you think the space, like what's your view on the space as a whole? Because I guess it's sort of in like an early growth stage, or like almost going into like a hyper growth stage, or just a pretty solid amount of growth. What do you think the space is going to do? Do you think it will start to pull away from other areas in, you know, single spirit bottles or anything like that? How do you view it?
It's really interesting. I think it's going to grow massively. Premiumization is the biggest trend. Like just people are expecting better. People will pay more and drink a bit less.
Really?
So that's the trend that we're seeing massively. And I think luckily it really suits us of like, if you're going to drink something, have one and make it great.
Oh, so you feel kind of like cheap alcohol, the £2 kind of like options are kind of going out the window?
I think so, especially when people have been making themselves high quality drinks at home, and the standard of bartending generally is fantastic. Like if you're used to a great espresso martini out, you'll really struggle to come then back to the RTD category and have something that's not up to the standard you're used to.
Yeah.
So the biggest trend we're seeing is growth and premiumization. And
what does that growth actually look like from an anonymous perspective? Like, are there things you can share with us in terms of volume and where you guys have got to the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of where we are, we're like 70% of that category, which is super premium, which is really exciting.
Yeah, congrats.
I think just 30% to go. No, it's really exciting, and I think it is still growing by value and by volume, which is great. In terms of like alcohol of the whole category, like only No and Low is growing faster than RTD as a category, and that's because from the Low and Low it's gone from a really small base and it's exploded, whereas RTD has always been really big and it's growing really fast, which makes it a super exciting space to be in.
And for you guys, I guess things like own brand, supermarket own brands, they seem to be doing a lot in this space as well. If I'm right, so like from what I see, I think like M&S do loads in that sort of space, and they always have done. How do you look at them as competitors? Because you, respectfully, you can never like take them down, if you will. Like there's always going to be a challenge to do that. So how do you guys position? Obviously, you're saying you stay true to your beliefs and your mission, I guess, as a brand. But how do you look at them from that kind of they could just copy us tomorrow and so much more powerful and all that kind of stuff? Like how do you guys see it?
Yeah, I think it's two things. One, the category is splitting in two. So the middle bit is the bit that's really suffering. So if you're super premium, people are trading up or coming to the category for the first time, or because of cost of living and the way the economy is right now, like the really cheap stuff is doing really well. So it's kind of diverging into like really cheap or really good. And so we're very happy to sit in this bit and leave the people who are great at doing this bit to that. That's absolutely fine. Like I couldn't make you an amazing mojito for £1. I can't do that. That's not my specialism, but I can make you the best one you've ever had for £4, right? Like that's where having just that focus and that just do one thing is really key. So I think that's a big piece. And then I think it's a different consumer as well, of like, if you're someone who looks to, it's a lot more of like a beer alternate at like 5%. Like I don't fancy a beer, I'm going to have something else. Whereas for us, it's, you love a cocktail and you know what they should taste like. And so you come to us.
Yeah. Just do one thing you mentioned a few times, and I've seen it a lot on the site and I think on the socials as well. That feels like a lesson that's been learned from something. What is this? Am I reading into that too much? It feels like you guys have learned something in the bad way that's gone like, right, we need to constantly remind ourselves of this. Because I think it's a great way to look at a brand, because so many, particularly F&B brands, kind of sprout off and do things. There's lots in health and wellness where they start off in sort of supplements and they go into nutrition, whatever it might be. Like for you guys, you are sticking true to that, but was there a lesson that was learned to now have that as a key value?
We're very lucky to have some like amazing advisors, and I think one of their big learnings that they keep bashing into us is just the focus piece.
Yeah,
it is hard enough to do one thing well, I think it's quite easy to do a lot of things badly. I know, because in the early days we ran around like headless chickens, and the sale you went after was the one person that replied to an email rather than really focusing. And so that, again, we're trying to apply that to lots of things of just, it's hard enough to be good at one thing.
Yeah.
And so if you can keep that focus, it can become a superpower.
How do you find that focus though? Because I've experienced exactly what you're talking about so many times. Like, I've had 303 in my agency for 10 years, and like I've always been sort of magpie effect where I'm like, oh, this looks interesting, that does, whatever it might be. And it's so easy to do, right? Particularly when you're a founder and you've got the ability to do that. Sometimes you've got the time and the flexibility where it comes. But how do you find your focus, and how do you stay to that course? Because you must have had opportunities coming around you as a brand where it's like, oh, we could do this, we could do that, could make whatever. How do you look at that focus piece?
Yeah, it's personally really difficult for me. My attention span is not the best.
Yeah,
like, it's really hard. And so the whole magpie shiny thing, like I really get it.
Yeah.
I think it's a couple of things. One is like building it into your culture, so like having it as one of the values that like everybody learns is one piece. But on a Monday morning, we do a thing called Rocks, where you say in front of like everyone the 3 things you're going to be working on. Like, I'm going to do lots of things this week, but the 3 main things I'm going to focus on this week are these 3 things. And they're the 3 things that I believe are most important, are going to move the needle. And everyone can see that. Like, everyone knows what you're doing. So that transparency piece and building it into the culture really helps. But it is learning. And I think also we're trying to get to the point where, like, Sam and I in the early days did every job, we were on every email. And that is a necessity at the start up, but not great. Like, I'm not the best marketer, I'm not the best brand person, I should not be doing deliveries, like who should not be driving lots of cocktails around London. But we had to do it because you have to do it. And so we learned all those jobs, and we have a massive appreciation for how bad we are at lots of them. And so our job now is to hire amazing people who are way more talented than us to do the bits that we're worst at, which is plenty. You know, we're a team of 30 now, so clearly there's plenty. And try to do every day just the bit that only we can do. Because we are now at the stage where, like, everyone at Moth, hopefully, that we've employed is better in their specialism than Sam and I were.
Yeah.
And so hopefully we're trying to hire to a point where what we spend our time doing actually adds value, rather than just doing a worse job than someone we should hire.
Yeah.
But that's only because we're getting to scale. That, like, at the start we did all the jobs badly, but we have an appreciation now for what good looks like.
I guess what you're saying is go from a startup to like a scale up. It's just focus. Like, that's the kind of unlock, right? Because I agree with you. I feel like most brands and businesses, they don't go to the next phase that they're probably looking to go to because of a lack of like focus, but also like alignment to the focus, if that makes sense. Like, does everyone agree in the team, however big it is, that this is the objective to execute on to go to that next phase?
Yeah, I think it's really important. And I think it's really I would really want to underline that we can only do that because we found like something that we really believe in and that really works. Like, it's really easy to say focus, but how do you know you're not focusing on the wrong thing?
Yeah.
We have an incredible amount of fortune, like, and luck behind. We found a thing that we really care about, and it turns out lots of other people really do too. So we are incredibly lucky to be able to have that focus on that one thing.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I've been there in the early days of scrambling around of how do you know what's the important thing? How do you know what the focus is? Like, we're not some visionaries that have gone, we found it from day one. We had like 2.5 years of trying to work it out and still work it out every day. But we found the thing that we think is important and other people think are important, so we can focus on it.
Yeah.
But that's not a guarantee. Like, that's a lot of...
In those days, just touching on that a little bit, where you didn't fully have that alignment to the thing that you wanted to do and what it actually was, how did that feel for you? Did you feel a little bit kind of lost in that, in terms of like the discovery phase? Because I think everyone kind of acts differently in that discovery phase, and it's a different experience for lots of us. But how did you find it?
I'm like just a blunt force optimist. Just like, it will always be fine. And I think it can be like, that can be a superpower and a kryptonite, but I'm just super optimistic, so I just assume it will be fine.
Yeah.
But I think no, because at the time you don't know what you don't know, and you sort of, if you wake up every day hoping to find the thing, like, that's great, but really if you probably looked at the 10 things you've done this week, you could probably work out what it was.
Yeah.
But no, I think in the early days you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know that you're running around. You just think you're doing what you can to grow. It's later we've like got much more like experienced and great advisors and great hires into the team that they really help shape that direction.
Yeah. Did you kind of just staying on the earlier days of growing the brand, and maybe kind of past you guys sitting in a factory making the product yourself, but how was your and Sam's relationship kind of tested? Did you feel like there was any moments that were always like really pushing against each other, or did you always feel really well aligned?
Yeah, we're very fortunate, and I'm sure he won't mind me saying that I'm terrible at everything he's good at. and he's not great at everything that I'm good at. And so we really are two halves that make a whole human. So I think if you can we have a massively high degree of trust in each other. And if you have that and you know that the other person is the better person for the job and you are happy to back their decision, that we're incredibly lucky that that's just how it worked out. Like, we think incredibly differently. Sam always wants something to be perfect and I always want something to be fast. Yeah. So in the middle, you get something done really well, really quickly. And like, mostly so far in the middle of me and Sam, there's a sort of happy medium of like success so far.
What is that split between you and Sam? Is like one of you, I always find there's like the operator and then the like creative in sometimes. Like, what is the split for you guys?
Yeah, I'm the mouth, which is why I'm here, and he's the brain, or the ears, which is good. I think, no, he's sort of brand and big picture, and also like very detail. Like if a line's a mill out on a label, he knows, like he will do.
Really?
Whereas I am not that. I'm people and commercial and relationships. And therefore, we have we had this theory at the start, like, we're both good at some things and we'll do those things, and the bit that we're both crap at, we'll do together. So we both did operations, we both did a bit of marketing, and we both did deliveries, but we got pretty good at deliveries by the end. But yeah, so no, I think it's just that really, really like separate skill sets, and then like letting the other person be good at what they're good at.
And as you started to grow, as you mentioned, your team is now 30 people, which is mega, and kind of congrats on that. Do you remember the first hire?
I do. So we had sort of two start at the same time. One was...
What triggered the hire, by the way? What triggered you guys?
I mean, we were in Waitrose, we had 200 stores, and it was Sam and I with our hair on fire, like help. So we had two. We had the first hire and the first walk through the door. So Eloise was the first walk through the door. She looks after our social and communities. Like, it was COVID. We had no marketing budget, and we had to tell people what we're doing. And cocktails are an incredibly social industry, and so we really wanted to prioritize like getting that right and that tone of voice, and like being a premium brand for the first time in the space, we knew it had to be different, so making sure that was right. And then inevitably the first person we hired, she had a longer notice period, so was second to walk through the door was Jade, our head of operations. And as I said, operations, Sam and I were doing it. And I remember one of the early calls with her, and she was like, so how many weeks cover have you got? How's it going? We're like, we've got -1 week's cover, which means we were overdue by a week. And she, oh, really? Okay. And I'm sure she was very worried starting, but she joined from Innocent and has just been a really sort of third part of the triangle of like, neither Sam or I are ops, but you need an operator. And she continues to be amazing.
How did you get someone from Innocent to join a small scrappy startup that's brilliant and doing amazing things? But that's always something that I do want to talk to you about, is attracting brilliant talent, because there is so much talent in your space and in the industry. But hire number 2 being someone like, we must have been relatively well positioned at Innocent to come to you guys. How did you approach that?
What was she thinking? Yeah. So first hire, second through the door. I knew someone who then went to Seedlip, and I wanted her to come and work for us. And she said, I can't because I'm going to go and do Seedlip, which is super exciting. So, but as a person I used to work with, you'll never get her to leave Innocent, but you should definitely talk to her. And so I did. I sent her a message on LinkedIn, and then for ages she was like, we called it like an operations manager. She was like, it's really junior, I don't want to do it. And Sam and I were like, no, we basically want you to come and run operations. We really need help. So long conversations, and I think she'd been there for 7 years, so it was a bit of a like, now's a really good time. And Innocent's obviously an amazing culture, and we had a huge amount of respect for it. So anyone from Innocent we took really seriously. Subsequently hired a few people from Innocent, and the person who originally went to work for Seedlip is now our head of MPD. So it's all come full circle, which is amazing. But she didn't know. She had a 3-month notice period, and she wasn't necessarily sure that after the end of her notice period we'd still exist, which is fair. But we did, and she's been an amazing part of the team ever since.
That's insane. And obviously, first couple of hires, it starts to happen. You're bringing people in. It sounds like your objective, which I think is brilliant, is to find people who are better than you and not only fill the hole, but also make the hole bigger and turn it into a mound and more experience and more development. What were the challenges for you about starting to grow people out and team? Because that was obviously your first time really about running a team of that scale and for your own brand. Or were you nervous about it? Was it a challenge for you, or did you sort of fall into it quite nicely?
It was definitely a challenge, like finding the right people. When it's just two of you for 2.5 years, you do worry that like your working style is going to translate. Are the people going to care as much? But everyone we've hired so far has been cleverer than me, and although that's not a very high bar, it's like really important not to be the smartest person in the room. Sam and I are always keen never to be the smartest people in the room. So I'm here, which is great. But yeah, from our perspective, it sort of had grown quite naturally. Although we're 30 now, that didn't happen overnight. Like it's sort of grown really naturally. We were just incredibly fortunate with those first few hires that like that was a really successful process. We haven't had many people leave. Like our retention's been amazing. We have an NPS score, which is like net promoter. So we survey the team. It's like, I think anything above 30 is supposed to be good. We're like above 90, like 98% NPS or something. So like putting culture at the start and the heart of Moth has really paid dividends. And so we've just been incredibly fortunate that we have the ability to focus on the culture because of the success of the product. And that's allowed us to hire some amazing people.
And we were speaking about this off camera and a few days ago as well around kind of culture and how obviously so many companies are trying to build out strong cultures because I think you said it was kind of commercial culture, right? Whereas if you get your culture right, everything else kind of builds from that. What is the culture at Moth? Like if you can explain it for none of us who've been in that room.
Yeah, so our head of marketing always explains it really nicely. She says like it's the only place I can come to work and be fully myself. So I can be fully myself at work and fully myself at home. There's no guards, there's like real transparency. I'd say it's just like if you had to pick a word, I would say kind. Like people are really just genuinely caring about each other. It's a very transparent, very autonomous. But yeah, people are just lovely. Like it's just, if you start with one of our values is don't be an arsehole. After a piece of advice that Sam went to an old boss who was like, he's doing amazing. And he was like, how do I be good at my job? He said, be good at your job and don't be an arsehole and you'll succeed. And so like, that very much of like, would you go for a drink with them? Would you have them around the dinner? Would you socialize? Would you, trust them with your business? Like it's worked really well. And then hopefully we're really generous back. Like we pay well. We have amazing like time off in lieu policies. We're very anti like the whole hustle culture. Like it's not big or clever to like work late and damage your mental health and sort of have only one thing going on in your life. So again, building all those things where people can be themselves, people feel looked after, people feel trusted.
Amazing.
And it's growing. Like it's really exciting to be on something that's growing so fast. And so to be ambitious and kind at the same time is kind of what we do. Yeah.
That hustle culture piece, obviously so many people to talk about it and it sounds like you guys are really anti it. But question for you is, do you not think you had that at the very start?
It's really interesting. I think it's different between like glorifying and saying it's a really good thing to work really hard and damage your mental health, a grind. And that's not good. That's like, it might be a necessary evil at the start, but that doesn't scale.
Yeah.
That's not long term. And I think idealizing that's really dangerous. Like idealize amazing results and being ambitious, but really you could just idealize, we wanted to turn up somewhere where we wanted to work. The best bit of my job is that I get to turn up to work every day and it's a positive impact on my life. I'm going to spend 40 hours there in the office and I get to have it as a positive rather than a negative.
Yes.
So yeah, the hustle culture doesn't mean you don't work hard, but like, and there will always be sprints and late nights, but give people extra days holiday, make sure they feel looked after, make sure that they're celebrated for that.
Yeah.
Rather than be like, that's the expected, that's the norm, we give everything.
Yeah.
Because we want you to have a life and you're better at work and you're better in the hours you're there if you're happier.
Yeah. And have you noticed that as a focus for you guys as a business? And I'm sure for you and Sam, you've prioritized that. How have you prioritized it? What do you guys do as leaders to make sure that keeps happening? Obviously policies and setup but is it management structure? Is it, the way you communicate? Is it a level of transparency? What is it that you think's really driven that forward?
I think transparency is one. And then we've also hired a head of people really early. Okay. So it's been Sam and my focus and it's a huge amount of time and effort because we think it's really important. But then we've hired someone way better than us again. So that head of people who's come in, she's done an incredible job. And like, that's a really clear signal to the team of like, this is our priority. Like a great piece of advice we heard earlier, there's culture eats strategy for breakfast. Like you can have the best plans in the world. If everybody's miserable, they're not going to happen. And so just make it the start and the focus and the success will come from that.
And how do you guys look at finding the right people for Moth? Because I feel like, as I said before, there must be such a huge pool of talent and at different levels, and whether it be juniors or seniors or C-suite, whatever it might be. How do you guys look at what the right people for Moth is? Is there a way that you identify that?
I mean, we definitely look at like amazing companies like Innocent and others that have like built incredible cultures. And I think if you can thrive in spaces like that, we certainly have like really sit up. Like we have sort of little clusters of people like from Seedlip and from Innocent who've done amazing jobs. Yeah. But then I think it's an attitude piece of like, it's not taken for granted that you can be good at your job and don't be an arsehole. If you pass that test, you're already miles ahead. You're doing brilliantly. And so like making sure that it's a culture fit in the interview. It's a really open conversation. We're really transparent. People ask us lots of questions. When you're a brand that's this old, you can't Google all the answers about us. So being really honest with people who come to work for us and come to interview, I think is really important. But yeah, it's not necessarily like you've got to have the perfect skill set. Have lots of employees at Moth who it's their first job.
Really?
And they're amazing. Like some of the most incredible stories, and talk about a first job. Welcome to high growth. Welcome to like innovation. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it is that sort of very much judge it on the people as well as the experience.
Is the one characteristic that kind of runs through the Mob team? Is it like ambition that rubs through? Is it kind
I
of
wish I worked for Mob.
Sorry, Mob. Slip that. Yeah, is the one thing that runs through that? Is it ambition? Is it kindness? What is the one thing? Because it seems like from what you're saying, everyone's so connected. Everyone's so, blended together. What is a one sort of characteristic?
Yeah, I think it is a kindness and ambition. I think that's important. But we have another value, which is be the perfect host. Like, just be like, to be generous and to be kind and to like want the best for people. I think that really is, that underlines it for us of like, when you've been looked after really well. Like, we do this because our job essentially, and the philosophy of all of this is, we want to look after people. We think the best way to do that is food and drink. We think the best way to do that really is drink. We think the best way to do that is cocktails. So our job is not to sell cocktails, it's to look after people. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't interest you, it won't work.
Yeah. Super interesting. And for you, how do you look at kind of growing the team? I know you're mentioning kind of like how they can be, the retention's really important to you and thinking about that. Is there something that you guys are focused on and headcount focus or anything like that? Like, is there something where you're aiming for a certain place?
I think, no, we're deliberately really lean, and like, it's not to try and have like 100 people and that's some sort of goal. It's to have enough people to do the work that everyone feels like they've got enough to do, they're trusted, and we're growing. I think it's not like we've got to get to triple figures or we've got to do this. I think it's people, but it's really not, we're managed by the team. Like, the managers come and tell us like, we're going to need this because we know we're going to hit X and scale and revenue, and like operations, we're going to make this many cans, and without this person, it's not going to work. Like, we just listen to people who are more experienced and clever than us and feed it back up.
Amazing. Over the last couple of years, I'm sure you've had lots of challenges that have kind of been about growing a brand. I mean, I think people think it's really easy to grow a brand like Moth for sure. But has there been something that's really stood out as a really big challenge for you personally throughout that process?
Yeah, actually, we just drink mojitos all day. It's really easy. It's great. No, it's not like that, unfortunately. Lots of challenges. I think scaling is easily the biggest challenge. Like, because it's the ultimate example of like, we take something that's supposed to be a glass that exists for 10 minutes to doing 5 million cans, and then like suddenly they've got to be perfect, and they've got to exist for like 18 months in a shelf life, right? Like, that scaling the product is difficult, but it's the team. Like, I think you can hire lots and lots of people very quickly, but can you keep what's special about the brand, and can you scale that? So like, for us, the biggest challenge and the biggest focus, and it's something we're really proud of that I think we're getting right, is the right people in the right roles and getting them in and keeping them. That's the biggest challenge, because amazing brands retain people, make them feel well looked after, and therefore they can go and do amazing things.
You said that was what you thought you got right. Is there something you think you guys have got wrong?
Oh, I mean, so many things. Yeah, definitely. I think from our perspective, things that we get wrong are... Oh, that's really challenging, because we get lots of things wrong. We make plenty of mistakes. I think we're really good at failing fast. Like, we do lots and lots of tests, and I'd rather like get an answer that something didn't quite work. But I think from our perspective, it's just like listening to the feedback, and we've got that right. The bit that we've really got wrong at the moment is there's too many people in the office. There's not enough desks. We're trying to work on that really hard. But no, like, I think Sam and I spent the first 2 years getting everything wrong. So we kind of got a lot of those lessons out the way before we brought other people into it. So that's definitely something. Like, we made like the price point wrong, we made the format wrong, we made where it was sold wrong, like we put it in shoeboxes, like all the things that you could get wrong, we got wrong. And that allows us to be where we are today.
Do you feel like now where you're, as the brand's grown, as the business has grown, obviously the stakes grow, right? There's a lot more on the line sometimes with failure, and I think it's great that brands and businesses can empower employees and team and even yourselves to allow failure to happen, because it's how you grow. But do you ever feel that as a founder there's that slight feeling of like, we've got to get this right, this isn't a moment where we can fail? Or do you just always kind of like run into the failure piece because that's going to lend to the growth?
I mean, definitely an optimist, and no one enjoys it at the time, like things going wrong. It's still like, if something goes wrong, like heart in your mouth, it's not fun. But I think from our perspective, like, it's really interesting, and my wife really helps with this, of like, what are you defining as success? Like, if Moth one day sells, is that success, or is the fact that I get to go to a job, and so do lots of people, where you turn up every day and you want to be there and it's a positive thing? Like, I'm very much trying to be like, that is a success. It's already a success. It doesn't have to sell one day or reach $1 billion or any of that. Like, that's not what you should be chasing. You should be chasing, do you want to turn up here every day? And that, I would say, is a massive success. But it's really hard as a founder when you raise investment and do other things, but like, it's only a success on exit. That's not true. Like, you can have success along the way. And having a team, like Sam and I used to be rubbish at celebrating things. Like, things would go well and always be next thing. And now we have like a team who we want to celebrate and who do amazing things. And so, yeah, having them in the room and part of the journey makes us realize what the hell's going on along the way, which is really special.
You guys became a B-Corp not too long ago.
Yeah.
What was the reason behind that? Why did you feel that was important?
I think we've always had sustainability as part of the brand. Like we don't view it as a marketing thing. It's just like a minimum standard. Like surely every brand should be thinking about this. But we went to the team. We said, look, we've always believed in this. We're doing this. How do you want to represent it? Do you want to do 1% for the planet, B Corp, X, Y, Z? And everybody said we want to do B Corp. So we said, right, we'll do it. So you guys what you want, we'll do it.
Yeah.
And so it was an amazing thing to have that engagement from everybody and say, this is what matters to all of us. So we're all going to put our work into it, go through the process and get it. And the really gratifying piece is like we scored really well and in the assessment, but actually...
For those that don't know, do you mind just explaining the B Corp process?
Sure.
Because I know it in actually some level of detail, but like just explain the process.
So it's it's business for better, right? It's for better for the planet, better for people, like doing good as a business. And so for us, it's a lot about it's communities, it's your workers, it's your like sustainability, it's your recycling, your packaging, all these things that we had as important, but didn't really have any standards to account ourselves by, or to sort of have like a measurement to say how we're doing. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to go for it. Of like we want to represent externally all the hard work we're doing internally, and share. And it's an amazing community of brands. There are like loads of brilliant people doing it. So having being able to say like you're saying, as we were talking about earlier, another amazing B Corp, and you share values and you share loads of things together that can make everybody benefit.
Do you think it's going to become the standard for a lot of brands?
I hope so.
Like everyone will just need to become B Corp to get to certain levels. You know what I mean?
I hope so. I mean, Waitrose and others do amazing sort of B Corp months and shelves. And obviously in March it is B Corp month. Like there are lots of good things going on. And I think the more the awareness grows, the more the consumer will ask for it, and therefore more people will have to sit up and listen. So I really hope so.
Yeah. Life as a founder is pretty tough. How do you describe it to those who aren't founders, your friends and your family?
I sell tins and annoy people. That's literally my job. I mean, professionally persistent and sort of I get to just talk to people and build relationships all day, like internally and externally. Like that's the best job in the world. Like I can't believe they pay me. They didn't for a long time, but now they do, which is great. Past probation. But it's the best job in the world. It's really difficult. I don't think I could ever go back having done it. Like it's just amazing.
Oh, really? You couldn't go back to another job in some ways?
Yeah, I mean, we hope that like if you come to Moth, like you appreciate what good culture looks like, and that you, as you move on throughout your career, go and advocate for everybody to have like a similar level of culture. Like we aim to be the best place you ever work. Like that's 100% where we are. And so if that's the aim and that's the business I get to turn up to every day, it's a massive privilege.
Yeah. As a founder, what are some of the things that you struggle with just being a founder?
Really good question. I mean, there's lots. I think the imposter syndrome is massive. Of like,
really?
This is Sam and I's first business. We want to tell you that we're serial entrepreneurs and we've done 1 million brands and we know what we're doing. Like, we are getting better every day at knowing what we don't know, and hence good hiring and good advice.
Yeah.
But it's our first go, right? It's really hard. And that can be a superpower of like, you don't know it's not done this way, so you do something innovative and you create a new category. But also, like, you don't know the right acronym for marketing and you have to sit there embarrassed with your head in your hands waiting for someone, hopefully, to spell it out. And so, yeah, it's definitely a lot of imposter syndrome. I think the success piece is really interesting of, like, you're only allowed to enjoy it at the end. Like, trying to reframe that and enjoy that along the way is really interesting. But yeah, I think it affects lots of people really differently, but I don't have to do this by myself, which is really exciting. Like, I have an amazing supportive wife at home, and Sam as a co-founder who there's no one else I'd rather do it with. Like, I'm like incredibly fortunate to have those in my corner. Yeah.
Do you think the imposter syndrome has ever kind of like stopped you from going faster, going further, if that makes sense at all?
No, I think it just makes you feel worse about it, doesn't it? I mean, I don't think it slows us down, and we sort of like get to bounce off each other. Like when I have a bad day, Sam will pick me up and vice versa. Like very, very fortunate there. But no, I think it just keeps you up at night, and hopefully it doesn't slow us down too much. It's
interesting, right? Because I think with founders, no matter what stage they're at, if you're building something new for the first time, and as much as you can learn from other things you've maybe built or previous experiences in that role, every challenge is just so different. And I think that as founders, you kind of experience the most broad variety of different problems on a daily basis to kind of put through. But it is pretty relentless, right? I mean, I'm sure you must have found that as well.
Yeah, it's full on. I think the difference these days now from the start was like we have these room of like amazing people who've chosen to spend their time working on Moth. Like I genuinely believe half of them could be running the country. Like why on earth you come to work with us? Hopefully because it's great and you enjoy mojito. But like having those people in the room gives me enormous confidence and does a lot for that imposter syndrome, because like we've got grown-ups, like really clever people who are brilliant at their jobs who've chosen to do Moth. Like that every day gives me confidence. I think it's really, that's one of the most surreal things. We had a moment the other day where we had an all hands meeting to start off the year, and you turn around, there's this room of faces of like geniuses, and you're like, well, this is insane.
That's crazy.
I think the imposter syndrome definitely kicks in now. We're going to the US and sort of doing it all over again. But again, hopefully we can hire great people who are smarter than us and go from there.
Yeah. What's your favorite part about being a founder?
Drinking Palomas. No. I was thinking the other day, like if I ever did something after Moth, I'd want to hire all the same people again and just come back to work with them. Really? Like they're just brilliant. And so I get to turn up every day to work with people who are fantastic at their jobs, and like there's nothing better than watching people who are brilliant at their jobs do a good job. Like that's amazing. So I think there's that. I think also like being able to make decisions so quickly. Like if you aren't happy with something in culture or the business or something, like you have a powerhouse of a team and an amazing co-founder to go, let's change it. Like if it's just bad, change it. Like everyone's had the experience where they said, oh, we could do that differently. That could be way better. Like why isn't it just better? You can do something about that. That power is amazing. And so although it might be a lot of effort and whatever, you can change things for the better, both internally and externally. Having that, like, it would make it very difficult to then go to somewhere where you can change it. You said, no, this is the way we've always done it and it's fine. You go, it's not fine.
The future for you guys is a big focus on the States. So at the moment, you're just in the UK, am I right? And so at the moment, I mean, when last time we spoke on the phone, you were just coming back from America. What is the plan with America, and how big is it compared to the US for you guys?
So we are like 10 weeks into a trial in the US. It's going really well. The aim is basically to answer the exam question, can Moth travel? And hope if you want to answer that definitively, you do it in the most difficult market in the world, the most competitive market in the world, and that's the US. So for us, if we can prove that the US is viable and it works, and we can play the same trick twice of selling people better RTD is better, then that's amazing for the global scale and the global reach of the brand, because the aim for us is global #1 premium RTD, and you can't do that just sat from the UK. And so for us to achieve that aim, we know we need to leave the UK at some point, and we've been very hesitant to do any of it because, again, try to focus, just do one thing. But for us, the time's now. For the States, the opportunity's there to go in.
How hard is the US compared to what the UK is, for those who don't know?
I think it's just the 50 states with 50 different sets of rules is really complicated.
So every single one is completely different?
Every single, it's 50 countries as far as rules are concerned. Really? And so I think of it as one place is a big learning that it's not one place, it's 50 countries. In terms of the scale, it's the most developed RTD market. There are more RTDs like in a store there than there are like maybe spirits or cocktails in like a grocery. Like you go into these stores and there's 200 RTDs on the shelf, and you're like, okay, how do we stand out? How do we get noticed? We're a small can, we look different to everybody else. So the big challenge for us is how do we stand out? How do we get noticed? But for us, we've had this wonderful early start that like if you try it, you love it. So our job is just to help as many people try it as possible, because we know in the US the feedback on the actual cocktails has been amazing. So our focus on quality and good liquid has been right. It's now just how to get it into people's hands.
What do you think there's a reason why some brands don't go near the US? Because I feel like there are, especially in the UK, there's some brands that kind of stay within the UK, go into kind of Europe and stuff, but the US seems to be a bit big and scary. Is it because of cost, expense, capital? Because just to get into that, I mean, the 50 states, if you will, just to get into there is a massive risk in some way. Do you know what I mean? Do you think there's a reason why some brands don't go near it?
I mean, you're right. It's a risk. Right?
Yeah.
I think it is. It's far away. It's different. Just because we speak the same language doesn't mean we speak the same language, as it were. So yeah, it's definitely a risk. But I think also for us, it's the home of cocktails and it's the biggest RTD market. There are lots of businesses where it's not. Like the US market is smaller than the UK. Like it's really interesting. Their views on RTD are very developed, whereas in other categories they might never have heard of it, and you've got to go and innovate in a much bigger, much more expensive market. Whereas for us, we're going in, everyone knows what RTD is. It's now let's do this new category of high quality and sort of cocktail focus.
Got you.
But yeah, I wouldn't want anyone to think it's a walk in the park.
And what else is in the future? Where else do you want to go with Moth?
Great question. I think the aim is that #1 global. I think, again, we don't need to do that by being in 150 countries. I think the aim is by going to the US, we're not saying we're done with the UK. We've barely started. We are 3 years old as Moth in the UK, like grocery, we have some presence in, but we've got a great D2C business and we've got the on-trade to go after. Like, wouldn't you like to have a cocktail slightly quicker, delivered perfectly consistent when you go out instead of a pint? Yes. Great. What are we doing about that? So growth in the on-trade is really exciting, especially at a time where it's having a really rough time, the UK on-trade. Like, pubs and bars are suffering, and if we can be part of the solution to help them, then we'd love to do that, because coming from hospitality, we care about the industry. So I think growing those channels in the UK, building the team, and then trying to play the same trick twice in the US, it's no guarantee. So we're working hard to make sure we build a sort of really healthy work culture, because the hustle and the sort of like very hard grind culture in the US is much worse than here.
I was going to say, yeah.
It's so we're trying to try and export a bit of Moth culture as well as product.
And build a US team. Yeah. Why build a US team? Local knowledge, that play? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, be specialists, have a focus, know what you're doing, hire people who are cleverer than us. Don't distract the UK team as well. They've got loads to do this year. We've got big ambitions here. We're not done. And so if you ask them to then do 2 jobs, they're no longer just doing one thing.
Yeah. My last few pieces to kind of touch on, and it's a question we will obviously ask everyone that come on, is what does it take to build a brand like Moth, in terms of what sacrifice do you have to give to really build a brand like this?
I mean, I think the first point before sacrifice is like an unbelievable amount of luck. I don't think anyone can sit in this chair and say they haven't had some luck along the way. Yeah, I think that's one piece, and a fantastic co-founder in my case and team and all the rest of it is one piece. In terms of what it takes, I think it's a focus we've talked about a lot is a piece. But I think if you find something that you really care about and other people care about it, like, just go at it, take no off the table and just make it work. Like, there's plenty of opportunities, like the first production for Waitrose and things, where like we could have just given up. Like, it is a persistence. It's just being annoying and making sure it happens. And like, if all is written on my CV after this is professionally very annoying and very persistent, that's a big enough of achievement to get us this far. Yeah. So I think it is that focus and that drive, but also like you do have to have people around you who like you can lean on and have support. Yeah.
And to kind of flip on the other side, what do you think a brand like this will take from you? What does it pull away from you?
It's really interesting, because like, if you hate Negronis, you won't like our Negroni. And when someone says they don't like a Moth, it's still really personal. Like, you might just not like that cocktail, and that's fine. But like, from my perspective, like, these are like, this is such a part of me and a part of Sam. Like, if people don't love it, it's really hard to hear. Really, but we have 10 now. Surely you got like one of them. But no. So yeah, I think it takes it's a huge part of you personally. It's not just a product out there in the world. Like, if a can's the wrong way on a shelf, or people don't like it, or they said had a bad experience, like, it really matters. It really hurts. I want to make it better for them, because what are we supposed to be doing here? We're supposed to be looking after people, and if we've not done a good job of that, that's personal. That really hurts. So getting that, that's not something you can separate yourself from. No, and even though it's painful, I don't think I'd want to separate it. I want to care. I want to get it right.
Love that. Well, Rob, it's been great to chat with you, and congrats, because I think getting to where Moth has got to is really hard, and you guys have achieved so much, and you've got 2 more drinks coming out very soon. Yeah, which is super exciting.
Very exciting.
10 in the range, 10 children, 10, which will be great.
Geez, a lot of
and best of luck with the US, because that is its own beast, and I know you guys are full force on that. But a massive congrats to you and Sam for what you've built, and thanks so much for coming down and having the conversation.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you. Thank you.